was 15, I was kidnapped by a serial killer. In June of 2002, I had spent the night with a friend and we were getting ready to go out for the day. Her mom asked us to water the plants before we left, so I volunteered to do that. So I was outside when a car pulled into the driveway that I didn't recognize, and a man got out. He had some pamphlets that he was giving out and wanted to know if my parents were home. I told him it was my friend's house, but her mom wasn't home. He said, "Okay, I'll just give these to you." And at the same time that he was handing them to me with one hand, he put a gun to the side of my neck with his other hand, and he said, "You're going to come with me." So I did. So he walked me around to the driver's side of his car, told me to get into the back seat. When I looked into the back seat, I saw a large plastic storage container, and he said, "Get in the container." Pretty much immediately from the time the gun pressed to the side of my neck, I knew that I was going to have to escape this person in some way, shape, or form. And this supernatural calm came over me. He eventually pulled over, picked up the container with me in it, and carried it a short way into his apartment. For the entire 18 hours that I was with him, I was sexually assaulted multiple times, but in the times in between, he would talk to me like you would talk to anyone. Then there were other times when he would say things like, "Let's watch the news and see if you're on there, and let's see if anyone misses you." He told me that when he was, quote, done with me, he was going to let me go somewhere where I wouldn't know where I was. And it was my choice if I wanted to go to law enforcement and always be known as the girl who was raped. For the most part, I wasn't restrained the entire time I was there. I was moving around, but I was very much under his control. At the end of the day, I was restrained for bed. So my captor put handcuffs on both of my wrists. They were connected with a quick link that was around the handcuffs, and it was tied to a rope that was tied to kind of the frame of the bed. I had a restraint on my left leg that was tied to the foot of the bed, and he lay down next to me and he went to sleep. When I woke up early the next morning and he was still asleep, I realized that this was my moment. I knew the first thing that I had to do was get my hands free. So I tried to use my hands to kind of reach the screw and unscrew the quick link, and I wasn't able to do that. So I had to actually use my teeth. I was able to lift the handcuffs out of the quick link. Then I had to slide my hands down to my leg and disconnect the leg restraint there from the bed. I slid out of the bed, went to the door, which was more or less barricaded with just things. It's a fairly small apartment. He's essentially on the other side of the wall from the front door. Eventually, I'm able to move the things out of the way, unlock the door, and I just threw it open and I ran. And that was probably the most terrifying moment because he was asleep in a bed that was next to a window that looked out on his front door. And so I just thought in that moment, he's going to wake up, he's going to grab the gun that's right next to him, and he's going to shoot me through the window. I just ran. I saw a car driving across the parking lot and kind of ran out in front of it and flagged it down. There were two men inside, and I told them that I had been kidnapped and asked them to take me to law enforcement. And so that's what they did. When I got to the police department, there was a police officer in there, and he said, "Can I help you?" I said, "My name's Kara Robinson, and I was kidnapped." And I held up my handcuffs. It felt a little bit in that moment to me like I wasn't believed. I've come to learn from speaking with that officer, and he was in a sense of disbelief. Stranger kidnappings are honestly relatively rare. He asked if I would be okay going back to the apartment. I said I would do that. As I expected, they all looked the same to me. When we were driving around, we saw a man that worked at the apartment complex, and we stopped him, and I told him everything that I knew about this man that had taken me and the inside of his apartment. I told him he drives a green Trans Am. This is what he looks like. He's, in his late 30s, maybe 5'10", around 200 pounds. He had a goatee. He pretty much immediately said, "I'm pretty sure I know what apartment that is." So that was good enough for the investigator. So at that point, he took me back to the region. My mom was waiting, and then she took me to the hospital for a sexual assault nurse examiner. So when I was actually waiting, law enforcement brought in a photo lineup. I immediately recognized my captor, but when they responded to his apartment, he was obviously gone. He was on the run more or less for about 2.5 days. Law enforcement thought that they had a really good lead. His sister told them that she was supposed to be meeting him, and so they set up an operation. Unfortunately, he noticed something was off. He drove off, and there was a short police chase. His car spun out of control, and he actually shot himself. I found out the morning after that they had located him and that he killed himself. And quite honestly, I was pissed. I was more angry than I think I've ever been. I wanted to sit across from him in a courtroom and for him to look me in the eyes and to know that I was the biggest mistake that he ever made, that he was outwitted by a 15-year-old. Whenever they went into his apartment, they found a locked footlocker that was a little suspicious. They opened it and they found some newspaper clippings. Eventually, about a month and a half later, was positively identified as the person responsible for the deaths of 3 girls in Virginia in 1996 and 1997. It took a while for me to process what that meant to have escaped a serial killer, because he told me he was going to let me go. So I thought, well, he was going to let me go. Over the years, I've realized that I very probably would have been another victim of this person. There are probably other cases that he committed that we just don't know about yet. It's really only the last 5 years where I have begun to heal and begun to realize what it means to be a survivor and how you can be impacted, how you can be vulnerable, how you can be authentic, but you can also be strong and brave.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more survival history.